One of the ways in which Judaism has come to the fore in the last 50 or 60 years is because for many Africans, Judaism is uncontaminated by the crimes of colonialism. For them, Christianity is a white religion. It's the religion of the colonial masters. It's full of traditions which are intensely European. But for them, Judaism is not. It's neither contaminated by colonialism, nor is it contaminated by anything to do with the slave trade. So it seems pure, it seems authentic, it seems to speak to their own traditions, it seems to speak to their heart.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, family. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. All right, and as you all can tell by the title today, we're going to be getting into Bantu Israelite history part 2. All right, we're going to be getting into some more Bantu tribes, some more Bantu subgroups, just verifying their traditions, their customs, showing how they relate to the Israelites. If you've been watching my channel over the couple weeks, a month or so, we've been breaking down the legends of the lost tribes and how these Bantu groups migrated into sub-Saharan Africa by way of the Levant into Egypt, down to Ethiopia, and then, spreading out into Central Africa, East Africa, and things like that. All right. So again, we're going to get into some Israelite history today. Again, particularly the Bantus. The tribes we're going to get into today are the Xhosa, as well as the Zulu, as well as the Kikuyu or the Kikuyu. All right. These are the tribes we're going to be getting into today, showing their Israelite heritage, showing their Israelite history, as well as showing oral traditions of their elders of the community. So give me 1 second. We're going to go ahead and get started. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. All right. Get this added up to the screen and we can get started. All right. So everybody knows the great Bantu warrior, Shaka. All right. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first people we're going to get into today, as mentioned, is the Xhosa group or Xhosa group. They are a subgroup of the Nguni people, all right? Or they are a subgroup of the Nguni Bantu, all right? And it's interesting enough, when we look in the scriptures, Genesis chapter 46, verses 24, it lists off Nguni or Guni as a son of Naphtali. And it says, and a son of Naphtali, Jeziel or Jeziel, and Guni and Jezer and Shemel, all right? And we see Guni is a son of Naphtali. So I'm basically saying this is possibly descendants of Naphtali by way of the Bantu, the descendants of Guni, or the descendants of Naphtali, rather, by way of Guni, ended up migrating by way of these people into Southern Africa. And again, the Xhosa is a sub-branch of the Guni, or a tribe of them. So let's get into some information on them. The first book we'll be getting into today is, of course, Black Jews in Africa and the Americas by Tudor Parfit. All right, Black Jews in America and Africa by Tudor Parfit. And we're going to start at the top. And it says, it was generally assumed that the religious structure of the Xhosa too had developed from some ancient Near Eastern religious system. In 1827, an English settler in the Eastern Cape noted that the Xhosa had a religious tradition that included some Mohammedan and Jewish rites. At the conclusion of the Sixth Xhosa War, Sir Harry Smith, recently appointed governor of the short-lived province of Queen Adelaide, set himself the task of endeavoring to understand the defeat enemy and maintain that he had found many things that resembled the laws of Moses, and it was amongst the Xhosa people. All right. So it goes on to say a similar theory was developed by Robert Garlington, spokesman for the land-hungry settlers in the Eastern Cape, an editor of Grahamstown Journal, which expressed the settlers' views. He too argued that it was possible to prove the origin of the Xhosa enemy by reference to their language, which he said clearly showed traces of its eastern origin in the frequent occurrence of the words which are plainly of Hebrew or Arabic extraction. He similarly observed that many persons suppose that they can discover in many of the ceremonies and affinities to those established by the ancient Jews, all right? And this is a comparison to the Xhosa. But following the theories of the time, he maintained that the Xhosa had degenerated from the manners and the customs of their forefathers, which we would expect to happen after 2000s of years being disconnected from the land. And it says their ancestors' home was somewhere in the Middle East, and it was only because of that long journey from the Eastern Cape and the lapse of time that they had lost the more noble and advanced traits of their ancestors. All right. And again, that's coming from Black Jews in Africa and the Americas. Continuing on, next source we're going to be reading from. We're going to be in this book for a while. It's called the Xhosa or the Xhosa Life and Customs, and this is by John Henderson. All right, this is by John Henderson, and we're going to start off at the very top of the screen. Excuse me, let me go back. But we're going to start at the very top of the screen where it says the original locality of the Xhosa tribe is difficult to determine, but the evidence, to my mind, point to an East African home. The fact that their arrival in the northern Natal about the same time as the Aba Imbo, an East African tribe, seems to indicate their connection in a combined movement. Then again, a fact of still greater significance is that in a religious sphere, many of the Xhosa customs and sacrifice seem to correspond, however, imperfectly with the customs of Jewish origin. It says the Arabs who had colonized or colonies on the eastern coast of the continent and intermarried with the native tribes in their vicinity from ancient times most probably imposed their religious forms of worship on the neighboring Bantu. All right. And that can be as well why the last source we brought out from Black Jews in Africa and America stated that they had some Mohammedan traits amongst them as well. But again, continuing, same source. I'm going to start at the highlighted. It says the first and most important of these is a certain similarity between some religious observances of the Xhosa and those of the Jews, which cannot be set aside as a mere coincidence. In this connection, compare the article of religion dealt with later on this work. All right. It says in the next highlighted, the question then arises, through what source could these Jewish ceremonies have come to the Xhosas? And that's a good question. How could they acquire these? You know, in my opinion, from my research, what we've brought out here, they would have came from their ancestors, the Israelites. All right. But it says the answer is through a source which, if not actually Jewish, was at least responsible to the Jews for its work, for its form of worship. All right. So again, they're saying the answer is through a source which, if not actually Jewish, was at least responsible to the Jews for its form of worship. All right. Again, we're going to be in this book for a while. Continuing on, it says the similarity of the various features of the Jewish and Xhosa striking or sacrifice is striking, in spite of the imperfections of the latter. All right. It goes on to say it may be thought that the writer is laboring the resemblance which he notes between the religious ceremonies of these two widely differing nations beyond what is justifiable. His excuse for doing so is that it is purely in his interest of truth and scientific research. All right, it goes on to say these striking resemblances convey to his mind the sacredly disputable fact that the Xhosa religion, notwithstanding all its cruelty, had come to them through Asiatic sources. All right, and this is the kicker, the place where I completely disagree, but you know we're going to bring it out anyways. It says either through the Hamites, whom the Bantu race is an offshoot. All right, and we know Hamites are not Asiatic, and we know Hamites do not practice Judaism. So they wouldn't have gotten this religion from the Hamites. And we know the Bantus are not Hamites because the Bantus and the Hamites come from two different fathers. Hamites are haplogroups A and B. Majority of these Bantus are E1B1A. So they will not be related. As well as or through Arabs who colonized the east coast of the Africa from Somaliland in the north down to Safola in the south, and thus indirectly of Jewish origin. So they're suggesting an indirect Jewish origin to explain how the Xhosa got these customs. But again, we know Arabs, they practice Mohammedanism or Islam. Majority of them are Muslims, and we know that a lot of these Arabs are E1B1B and the Bantus are E1B1A, so these people wouldn't be Arabs either. And it goes on to say, and also that this religion has been a most potent binding force in preserving the unity of the Xhosa tribe, without which degeneration would long ago have been its faith, all right, or fate. Continuing. But it goes on to say, there are 1 or 2 points of Jewish peace offerings mentioned in Leviticus, which may be noticed here. All right. And when they say here, they mean amongst the Xhosa. It says the fat from the intestines of the sacrificial animal must be burnt on the altar by way of an acknowledgement to God before any other parts was offered. It goes on to say eating the blood of the life was prohibited. It says the breast within the Xhosa or the income and the right shoulder was reserved for and eaten by the officiating priest. And again, this is traditions amongst the Xhosa that they're that we can see within the Old Testament, of course. And it says the flesh of the peace offering was to that portion of the sacrifice which God claimed specifically for himself, yet he ordered the meat to be used for feeding the people who were present. All right, this is amongst the Xhosa as well. It goes on to say here, then we have it. What we have in these particulars, at least an exact parallel between the Jewish and the Xhosa sacrifice. So we see the Xhosa sacrifice is pretty much parallel to the laws in Leviticus, and we could read an example of this in Leviticus 7, verses 30 through 32. It says, his own hand shall bring the offering of the Lord, made by the fire, the fat with the breast. It shall be, or he shall bring, that the beast may be waved for a wave offering before the Lord, and the priest shall burn the fat upon the altar. But the breast shall be Aaron's and his sons, and the right shoulder, all right, shall ye give unto the priest for a heave offering of the sacrifices of your peace offering. All right, and this is the same thing we just outlined within the Xhosa customs. And again, if I'm not pronouncing this tribe's name correctly, please forgive me. I do not speak native Bantu, Kikuyu, or Kikongo, things like that, Swahili, but continuing. It says, imperfect as the Xhosa monotheistic religion, may be to those of higher civilization, yet it is of all other forces that which preserves the unity of a tribe and preserves it from degeneration. Okay, it goes on to say there is that in it, as we consider its various features, sacrifices, circumcisions, abstentions from certain meats, etc., which convey the impressions of a fuller and clearer meaning of religion and worship in a distant past. And this would be true because these people would have been in the land, or their ancestors would have been in the land of Israel, keeping these traditions, keeping these feasts, keeping these offerings, keeping these laws, basically. And as they migrated into Africa, the only way they would have been able to pass these things down is orally. So over time, it would have became degenerated, or would have came. I guess you could say would have became amalgamated with other tribes and things like that, other customs, because we did mix with other tribes and things like that. So we would have, of course, picked up some of their traits, some of their customs and things like that. And that's why this author is saying it's degenerated at this point. But you can still see traces of it within their customs. That's why they still keep circumcision, abstain from certain meats, and do these other things we're going to bring out. But it says we do not care to assert too dogmatically that there is a close relationship between the highly developed Jewish or Christian religion and that of the Xhosa. All right. Again, continuing on. Okay, so we are at circumcision. It says all Bantu tribes do not observe the circumcision or the custom of circumcision, but the Xhosa, for the time of immemorial, have strictly observed it as one of the nation or national religious customs. Though many nations could circumcise in some form or another, yet it may be regarded as an essentially Jewish custom. The detail of the custom, as practiced by the Xhosa, differs somewhat from those mentioned in Scripture, and we know this would change over time. It is true for among the Jews from the date of Moses, the rite was performed on infants, whereas among the Xhosa, it is a rite of initiation or initiation into manhood. All right, so they do it as a rite or initiation into manhood, opposed to when their ancestors did it back in the land. It was performed on infants in the 8th day, of course. Continuing on, and we're going to start at the very top. Excuse me, go back. But we're going to start at the very top. Brother says Bantus aren't Israelites. They're native West Africans. All right, brother. Can you please show me some documentation on that? Can you please drop some sources, some proofs to that? Because on this channel, we've already showed you that Bantus are not related to native Africans. They're not related to native West Africans, native East Africans. Bantus are actually non-indigenous to Africa. They came in from the Levant. The Bantu expansion was expanding from the Levant of these people coming into Africa. All right, and again, we brought out we actually brought out the findings of the native people in West Africa, and you did not find E1B1A there. You found haplogroups A, and you found haplogroups B, and even within that specific genetic study, it tells you that modern day Bantus are not related to these ancient Cameroonians that they found the bones of in Sri Lanka. So Bantus are not native West Africans. All right. Native West Africans would be haplogroups A and B, and that's even for North, West, and South Africa, East and South Africa. But again, continuing on to the back to the presentation, I'm going to start at the top. It says, again, we find something similar to the customs of those or the Jews who refrain from eating a certain swine or mussel as a result of Jacob's wrestling with the angel at Peniel. When through the touch of an angel, the swine of his thigh shrank in Genesis, I believe, well, I don't even know what Roman numeral that adds up to, but within Genesis, in reference to this, it is said, the children of Israel eat not of the swine which shrank, which it is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day. All right. And it goes on to say, is it a mere coincidence that many, if not all Bantu tribes, will not eat of a certain thigh muscle or slaughtering cattle? And I think it's not a coincidence because this was a law, a tradition, a custom passed down by their ancestors. All right. So continuing on. Excuse me 1 second. All right, brother. He goes on to say E1B1A is native African. All right. Can you please drop, some sources, some literature, some references within the chat to show that instead of just commenting, because we show references here. So again, if you do have sources on that, you could bring it up. And if you hear after this video, I actually go to the ancient West African DNA findings. I go to the East African. I go to all of African's ancient findings. You won't find E1B1A there. E1B1A is not native to East Africa, West Africa, South Africa. All right. You didn't see an E1B1A into Sub-Saharan Africa until about 2,000 years ago. But again, we're going to start at the highlighted. It says, when a Xhosa die, if he be the owner of the hut in which the death occurs, the usual custom is to burn the hut together with the contents, especially all personal articles belonging to the deceased. The hut is by some people razed to the ground instead of being burnt. All persons in attendance of the dead or who have touched anything belonging to him or her must purify themselves by washing the whole body as well as the clothing, after which they are regarded as having purified themselves. And we see an example of this within the scriptures, of course, within Numbers chapter 19. We can start at verse 11. And it says, he that touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall be not clean. Whosoever toucheth the dead body of any man that is dead and purifieth not himself, defile the tabernacle of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of the separation was not sprinkled upon him. He shall be unclean. His uncleanness is yet upon him. All right. So we see all these Old Testament traditions and customs amongst the Xhosa people thus far. All right. Continuing on. Limitations of the dead. And again, brother, can you please drop a source to what you're saying? All right. We don't believe just chit chatter, you know. Can you please drop a source for what you're saying? Can you show me a native West African tribe? Show me their DNA and then compare it to these Bantus. All right. Because last time I checked, pygmies are like native West Africans and things like that. And they not related to Bantus. All right. But again, limitation for the dead were with the Jews' organized affairs, and much connected with them was purely formal. We find something similar amongst the Xhosa. When a death is imminent, friends and neighbors gather in or near the hut of the dying person, all women, as soon as death is announced, begin wailing, often in an extravagant manner, as if they desire to call attention to the depth of their affliction. All right. And we see this is a lamentation of the dead, or, mourning customs that Israelite men and women would do. It's things like this was done at Jacob's funeral or Jacob's mourning when they went to go bury him. All right. But continuing on, we see first fruits, or the week of first fruits. It starts at the top. It says, it was customary with the Jews to offer presents to God of the fruits of the field before the crops were gathered in. These were offered in the name of the nation. After the offerings had been presented, all were at liberty to gather in the harvest. There is a ceremony observed by the Xhosa tribe connected with the first fruits, but it differs in certain details from the Jewish observance. For instance, with Xhosa and many Bantu tribes, the ceremony takes place within the summer, when the early crops are ripening, and not as with the Jews in the autumn. Before the harvest, the ceremony is called Uku Shawama. No one will eat of a new grain prior to the ceremony, but after, it will partake freely. All right. And of course, scripture reference within Exodus 23:16 says, in the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labor, which thou hast sown in the field, in the feast of the ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors of the field. All right. So again, we just wrapped it up with the Nguni group, also known as the Xhosa group, or the Xhosa people. They are an Nguni subgroup. Now we're going to deal with the Zulu. Again, these are an Nguni subgroup. And again, if you wasn't here in the beginning of the video, I said I believe these Nguni people would be descendants of Naphtali. All right, by way of Genesis 46, it's in 24, it says, in the sons of Naphtali, Jaziel and Nguni and Jezer and Shemel. All right, and Nguni would be one of these Bantu ethnic groups that would have been a part of that diaspora that migrated in, as we've already covered in previous videos, showing the Bantu migration into Africa. But again, now we're about to deal with the Zulus. All right, 1 second. Look in the chat. Yes. Thank you, bro. I just realized that as well. It seems as if he's trolling because, we've brought plenty of information out, showing how Bantus are not related to ancient Africans and how they migrated into Africa, how they possess Levant ancestry, things like that. We've already brought this out. So if the brother has any more questions, he can go watch older videos we've did, previous videos we did, where we've already disseminated this information. But again, source on the left, Judaizing movement, studies in the margins of Judaism, to the prophet. All right. And we're going to start at the highlighted, of course. But it says, so close indeed were the resemblances according to Colin So. The frequently the point was made that anyone who wanted to really understand the Bible had best study Zulu customs. All right. So if you want to know the Bible, you have to study these Zulu customs because there was a striking parallel. Zulu habits and even the nature of their country so nearly correspond to those of the ancient Israelites that is very senses are brought continually, as it were, before the eyes and vividly realized in a practical point of view. Practically everything about the Zulus, from their lunar calendars to their order of religious feasts, seem to reflect an Israelite past. The Zulu keeps his annual feast and observes the new moons as the old Hebrews did. The very Zulus have their festivals at the beginning of the southern spring and at the end of their autumn, corresponding to the Feast of First Fruits. All right, and as we just went over, same with the Xhosa and the Feast of the Ingathering of the ancient Hebrews. And of course, Psalms 81, verse 3, we knew um, new moon was something we keep all the time. Even to this day, we keep new moon. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time of the appointed on our solemn feast day. All right, so let's get into it. One more quick source before we get into some more information concerning the Zulu. Jews of Ethiopia, the birth of an elite. And then again, this is by Tudor Parfit. But again, we're going to start at the top where it says, well, we're going to start in the highlighted. And this goes on to say, within a book narrated or narrative of a journey of the Zulu country in southern Africa, what struck him most about the religion of the Zulus was the imminent, almost forgotten presence of the memory of a supreme deity. But immediately, he took the customs of the Zulus to be apparently of Jewish origin. Some of the customs he enumerated included circumcision, of course, the tradition of the younger brother marrying the widow of his deceased brother, the daubing of the lintels of homes in times of sickness, and the festival of the first fruits, and so on. All right. And scripture references for livered marriage you can find within Deuteronomy chapters 25, verses 5 through 10. And also first fruit references again, Exodus 23, verses 16. So we see these Zulus and Xhosa. They do have similar customs because they would come from this same Nguni or Nguni stock. But starting at the top, as British power was extended further east, the same discourse continued. Throughout the 1850s, Zulus were identified as Jews, all right? Throughout the 1850s, Zulus were identified as Jews. Their settled pastoral life and their religious and social customs were evident enough of this. G.R. Peppercorn, the magistrate of the Pafana location, observed the Native Affairs Commission that in fact the Zulus practice a sort of ancient Judaism. All right. So if these people were native West Africans, where would they get this Judaism from? If Jews brought this to them, where's the Jews at today that they absorbed this or who they adopted these traditions from? Where are the Jews at today that the Zulus adopted these traditions from? Again, a general type of custom and laws of the Amazulu may be found in the early history of the Hebrews. Peppercorn suggested that any European who wanted to understand Zulu custom had only to read the Old Testament. All right. So if you wanted to understand Zulu customs, you needed to be acquainted with the Old Testament. Zulu polygamy, marriage customs, even attitudes towards the work were all described in the appropriate biblical passages. All right. Henry Francis Fenn, who also established a small Zulu chieftaincy in the 1820s and has spent decades living among them, noted, I was surprised to find a considerable resemblance between many of the Zulu customs and those of the Jews. These included war offerings, sin offerings, pituitary offerings, festivals of the first fruits, as well as periods of uncleanness on the decease of the relatives and touching of the dead, circumcision, rules regarding chastity, rejecting of swine's flesh. Fenn concluded that in view of the nature of the assembly or the assemblies of many of the customs to those of the ancient Jews, as prescribed under the Levitical priesthood, I am led to form the opinion that the Zulu tribes have been very superior to what they are to the present time. All right, and scripture references for war offering, you can find that in Deuteronomy 20, verses 10 through 12. Sin offering, Leviticus chapter 4, verses 1 through 13. Purification of touching of the dead, Numbers 19 and 11. And rejection of swine, Leviticus 11 and 7. All right, so next source we'll be going into is discovering Jews in Southern Africa, a crucial appropriation or approach of the comparative method. All right, and give me 1 second before we continue. All right, and the brother says, show me the Levantine ancestry and the Bantus. Please go back and watch my other videos. Again, I've already brought this out, brother. Can you please show me, drop a source for a genetic study telling us that, Bantus are related to ancient West Africans? Thank you. The fact of the matter is you can't deny this. Truth E1B1. Why haplogroups is all over ancient Israel sites, also in places like Spain, Portugal, where they were sent during slavery. Thank you. We've already brought this out. Nobody said, I'm not even finna answer this. We about to get back to the presentation again, brother. If you want to hear my preface on this, go back and watch older videos. Or matter of fact, you can email me. We can set up a private Zoom and we can go over this. But again, I've already brought this out. Sorry you late. But we're going to start at the highlighted. Matter of fact, we should start. Let's start at the top, the very top, where it says James Stewart, magistrate and linguist, recorded much of the ethnographic material that scholars have cited when probing the native perspectives in regard to religion and organization. The interviews which he conducted and recorded revealed much of this matter. All right, so he's conducting Zulus or interviews on Zulus. When questioning elderly Zulu, Dinya, Stewart records the elders' interest in solidifying the origins of his people. All right, so this is the elder speaking. He states, we are anxious to find out where we came from. These Jewish customs of ours are evidence that we have came from the north. From this evidence was in existence before we came in contact with the Europeans. All right, so he said there's with the custom we have, it's enough evidence that we came from the north. And a matter of fact, we've had this evidence, we've had these traditions before coming in contact with the Europeans. All right. Highlighted section. It says Maximus was interested in the many similarities that could be found between the traditions of the ancient Israelites, which he knew about from his reading of the Old Testament and those of the Zulu. Maximus believed that he could reconstruct the history of the Zulus by studying the history and customs of the ancient Judaism. The voices of Dinya and Maximus, all right, and these two are actually elders of the Zulu, as recorded by Stewart, led us to believe that there was at this time some fevering amongst the Zulus to reach the conclusion that they might have Semitic roots. All right, and this is going on among some interviews with the Zulus. But again, starting at the top, it says this comment should have incited much response from his guests, with little is recorded suggesting that the man did in fact view Christian as, excuse me, it's something blocking my view on the screen right now. Let's just start at the highlighted. But it says, fancy, the Zulu can claim to be related only to the Jews. They are in great distress. How can they expect the Jews themselves in misery to help them or to help and deliver them? All right, and that was a quote actually coming from Webb and Wright. But it goes on to say Stewart is not only early source or material, and Childister of and Lee Rock's note, Henry Francis Fenn, who wrote in 1820s, concluded that many of the practices and rituals of the Zulus coincided well within Jewish framework. All right, so we keep seeing this same thing amongst these Zulus, amongst these Xhosa, that they do practice a form of ancient Judaism, that they do form or practice a form of ancient Jewish traditions. All right. And again, before we wrap up on this source, we're going to start at the highlighted. And it says, or we're going to start at the beginning of the second paragraph, where it says John Collison was ordained a bishop of Natal in 1853 and immediately began a very thorough investigation of Zulu religious belief. His main contribution for the purpose of this examination in his conclusion that the two most important names and descriptions of the Zulu God, and forgive me because of course I'm going to mispronunciate this, but Ukunkulunku, all right, and Vinigalisi could be equivalent or equated perfectly with the Hebrew equivalents Elohim and Jehovah, respectively. In Colinso's mind, the Zulu represented a living museum of ancient Israel. All right, so within his mind, the Zulu represented a living museum of ancient Israel. And it was by studying and observing their current modes of worship and ritual that scholars and theologians alike will be able to reconstruct the Old Testament way of life. All right, so this is what many scholars believe. All right, that studying the Zulu customs and culture would give you a better understanding of the Old Testament. And they also believe that you needed to understand the Old Testament to understand Zulu tradition and culture. All right. All right, but again, next source is coming from the gospel in all lands. All right, the gospel in all lands. And we're going to start at the very top. All right. And it says, the more thoroughly I investigate the subject, the more I am inclined to think that the Zulus were cradled in the land of the Bible. All right, and this is coming from Reverend Joshua Tyler. But again, it says, the more thoroughly I investigate the subject, the more I am inclined to think that the Zulus were cradled in the land of the Bible. Whether the reader will be able to discern in the following marks of the lost tribes of Israel or not, I am quite sure he will see resemblance enough to convince him that of not originally from the Holy Land, their intercourse with the inhabitants of that country must have been remarkably close, that their physical characteristics shall undergo a great modification after coming into the African continent and mingling with the Negro races. Is not to be wondered at in passing from Egypt down to the eastern coast, color and type of character would naturally change, but the question arises, would they be lost? Can we not find sufficient resemblances to favor the opinion that they were once Israelites indeed? And this is the question that this author is proposing, and of course you can. But again, on the left, we're going to continue to read. And it says, the complexion of the Zulu varies, and of course to the right is a pretty good example of the different complexions of the Zulus, from the lightest of the lights to pretty dark. But it says the complexion of the Zulus varies. They have a decided preference for light brown or chocolate color, or as they express it, black with a little red in it. An Arabic cast of features is often observable, and it goes on to say Umaniana, the prime minister of the Sitawoyo, the late Zulu king, is said to bear a striking resemblance to a Persian sheik. Zulu foreheads are higher than those of the average Negroes. Their lips are not so thick, their nose is not so flat, and their countenances have marks of intellect or interlacuses, distinguishing them from other tribes south of the equator. All right. Mr. Stanley, after emerging from the dark forest, soon came in contact with a people called Shahuma or Nahuma. He spoke of them as twin brothers of Zululand. A Zulu woman and his party conversed with them freely without an interpreter. And when asked, where did you come from? She replied, from the land of Shaka. They told her that she was one of their people in color, language, and muscular strength, as well as in dress and customs. They have close affinities to the maritime Zulus. Stanley calls them the most interesting people next to the Pygmies in all of Southern Africa. All right. And your Pygmies and your Khoisans, those will actually be your native peoples to to Southern Africa. All right. But it goes on to say, fine field for missionary labor will soon, we trust, be open among the tribes. And the translations of the Bible now used in Natal and Zululand would doubtlessly answer for them. All right. Continuing on next source. And I know this is I guess you can say a little not that good at legible or hard to see. But again, I'm gonna continue reading real quick. Let's see. I'm reading the comments real quick. Yeah, man. Yeah, just ignore that, brother. I guess he's just here to scoff around. But yeah, man, we've brought this evidence out. Man, you need to go back and watch some more videos, my brother, with all due respect. But let's continue to disseminate this information. We're gonna start at the left. It says there is a missing link in the chain of presumption, evidence that the Zulus are of Hebrew origin. All right, so there's a missing link within this. There is a warn of Hebrewisms in their dialect. A Jewish musician it is said in comparing Zulu with Hebrew songs has found resemblances, but not of striking nature. Zulu maidens have from time immemorial observed a custom of going annually upon the neighboring mountains to wail, using two words similar to those in Hebrew, expressing of grief, a reminder of Jewish girls wailing for Jehoshaphat's daughter. And now, as to clear similarities between Zulu and the Jewish customs, Uku, or wherever this is, let me see if I can read this. Uku Shawana, a feast, or this is actually what the Zulus call the Feast of First Fruits, the Ukusawama. This is a Feast of First Fruits. It is observed regularly within Zululand and conforms strictly to the Jewish observances of it. Until lately, Zulus reject swine's flesh, of course, as an article of diet. They are fearful to step on a newly made grave, lest to contract a disease of the feet. Widows are expected to marry the brothers of their former husbands. The rite of circumcision has been observed by them until within a few years. The disease of the people are attached to a cock once a year, which is taken out by a fit person into the wilderness and let go like the scapegoat. So we see the scapegoat laws or customs amongst them. And it also says the slayer of a king is not allowed to live. And it says a childless woman is an object of pity. All right. And wrapping it up with this last slide on the Zulu. But it says the cunning and arts of the Inzani, which is a witch doctor, are like those of the wizards and familiar spirits about whom we read within the Old Testament. Zulu sacrifices to appease the spirits are indicative of the belief that without shedding of blood is no remission of sins. The expression is thy servant a dog is frequently or is frequent among these people. All right. So again, the expression is thy servant a dog is frequent among these people. They swear by the names of their kings. They burn incense, mixing herb with the fat of the beast that they slaughter within sacrifices. When an ox is slain, a part called insamiyama is given to the king, as the Jews were accustomed to give to their priests. All right. Great men have special service to pour water on their hands after they have eaten. All right. And we know this is purification or washing of hands. It goes on to say Elijah, the son of Shaphat, is here, which poured water on the hands of Elijah. And this again, that's a scripture from 2 Kings chapter 3, verses 11. And it goes on to say preparations for the reception of the Zulu king reminds us of Exodus chapter 13, verses 10 through 3, as well as 15, as on the day of the first fruits, when he displays himself in all his majesty in the royal crown no man may approach him, and all must be washed and purified. It goes on to say the habit of the cursing the enemy before into battle in ancestral with the Zulus, evident in the superstitions that it will produce or promote success. All right, so they have the war battles or the war cries or the war offerings as well as the Xhosa did. And it goes on to say how like the Jewish ideal within Numbers 23 and 6, when Zulus slaughter the bone of the right shoulder of the animal and offer the lower jaw are carefully preserved from breaking out the devotion or the devotion to the ancestral spirits. And we see this within Exodus 12 as well, when the right shoulder is preserved for the priest. And it goes on to say, not a bone of the Paschal lamb or the Pesach lamb or the Passover lamb is broken. All right. And again, last page from this particular source. It says, other similarities might be referred to, such as heaping up piles of memorial stones, naming children from circumstances connected with children's birth, laws for the purification of women, marrying the oldest daughter, first sprinkling blood at the entrance of their huts to ward off calamities, demonical possessions, etc. Then there are traditions of dividing a sea by the stroke of a cane, also striking a rock so that the water gushes forth of the Nachin deluge and of the man who ate grass like an ox. Zulu Christians often remark, we understand the Old Testament better than we do the New. It describes so perfectly our home life. Okay. And again, Zulu Christians often remark, we understand the Old Testament better than we do the New Testament. It describes so perfectly our home life. Okay. And again, next it says, whether of Jewish descent or not, they are exceedingly interesting people and are destined when enlightened to become important factors in the regeneration of the dark continent. All right. So we see all these Old Testament traditions and customs amongst the Zulus. Again, and this would have come by way of their ancestors through the Levant, down through Egypt, to Ethiopia, and then dispersing out into Central, West, South, and East Africa. But again, continuing. And something else we have very interesting is here from this book right here, Records of the Past. And it's possible archaeological evidence to support that these people are of Hebrew extraction. Concerning a Hebrew coin found within Natal or within Zululand, it says in the highlight of the Hebrew coin of the reign of Salmon, Maccabeus bearing the inscription, 4th year of the deliverance of Zion, which is 139 BC, is reported in Anthroposis and having been dug up in Trappist Monastery of Marin Hill, Natal, South Africa. And again, this is within Zululand. All right, and it says the coin presents no peculiar points, but it is so special in interest because it is found in Natal. All right, it is found within Natal, and again, this is within Zululand. Hebrew coin is found. All right. So now we've done with dealt with the Xhosa. We've done with the Zulu. Now we're about to deal with the Agikuyu or the Kikuyu people. All right. The Agikuyu or the Kikuyu people, as they are known by. And this is coming from the Argus Saturday. This is October the 7th, 1922. This is a newspaper article, and this is specifically within page 8 or on page 8. Of course, if you need the link, I got you. But again, Lost Tribe found. And on the left is a screenshot of the article, but it's pretty hard to read. Thankfully, the website was able to, put a translation out on the side of it. So here we have the translation of what is actually within this newspaper article. And it states Lost Tribe found. Ethnolinguists in Kenya or in Kenya colony believe they have discovered in the Kikuyu a race of natives who inhabit the regions around Nairobi, one of the lost tribes of Israel. They base this belief on the fact that many of the tribal customs of the Kikuyu bear a strong resemblance to those recorded in the Old Testament. All right, and this is the third Bantu tribe we'll be going over today and showing how they, have these Old Testament traditions, how they have these customs, and how even their elders have these migratory examples of them coming from this land, as we're going to bring out within the Kikuyu. But again, it says, for example, they believe in God and the resurrection of the soul, would not touch pork, and would never hurt pigs, or do other unclean work. Also, they carry out the ancient Hebrew customs of the scapegoat, by which a goat, after having had transferred to it the sins of the people, is driven out into the wilderness. And again, these are the same customs and traditions that we see the Limba keeping as well. All right. Just wanted to throw that out there. But again, source to the left, biblical usage and abusage in Kenyan writing. All right. And we're going to start at the very top. It says, in the interpretations put upon Old and New Testament events and stories and great divines, it is to be found. We have perhaps, to some sliders or to some siders, some of the practical issues associated with the Old Testament affinities and used as material by the writers of Kenya. When the missionaries brought the Bible to the Kikuyu, wrote Mungo in his autobiographer story, Child of the Two Worlds, our people understood the Old Testament right away, all right? And this is a Kikuyu man, and he states our people understood the Old Testament right away. For many of the customs of the ancient Jews were very much like ours. Like the Hebrew people of the old, the Kikuyu are a God-fearing people. And when they approached Ngai, they brought him a sacrifice. All right. It says the Kikuyu adore Ngai because of the beautiful land which he had handed over to them. And Ngai, I believe, is the name the Kikuyu used to refer to the Most High. But it says they recognize him as the one and only God. They had no idea, of course, about Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, of the devil, but they did recognize the existence of the ancestral spirits. All right. And we know a lot of these Bantu tribes would not have, knowledge of Christ because they was exiled out of the land before that. A lot of these Bantus came in to Africa around 700, 600 BCE, as we brought out in previous videos before. And we know Christ came on the scene many hundreds of years later. So this is, shouldn't be a shock when we see sources letting us know that these people didn't have an idea of Christ, especially because these people were exiled from the land way before, Christ came on the scene. And again, quick source to the left, Mao Mao, From Within, an analysis of Kenya's peasant revolt. All right, author Donald L. And we're going to start at the highlighted section. And it says, the Old Testament, which covers the greater part of the Holy Bible, is mostly Israelite or Jewish religion, which in all respects agrees with the Kikuyu religion, all right, before the arrival of the Europeans, all right? And that's one thing we need to, make sure to note, that these people were doing these traditions and customs. They had this way of life before the Europeans even came to their coast, to their shores, to their lands, to their villages. But again, it says this only makes a Kikuyu believe that our religion was the right one. I had a strong thought that the Kikuyu were one of the 12 tribes of Israel, all right? And again, source to the left. All right, so now we're going to go to this next source, Kikuyu Mystery Revealed, Descendants of Asher, a lost tribe of Israel. All right, and this is coming from a Kikuyu author herself, actually. And the name is at the top. I don't want to butcher her name, but again, Kikuyu Mystery Revealed. But within this book, she outlines the oral traditions of the Kikuyu, what their ancestors say, and things like that. But we're going to start at the very top. It says, Our ancestors believed in one God and sacrificed unblemished lambs or goats under two um, species of fig tree, either the Nkulu fig tree, whose binomial name is the Ficus sycamores, or the Ngumis tree, whose binomial tree is Ficus dimingi. Their leaves or their lives were centered around Mount Karin Yaga. All right, so Mount Karin Yaga, which I will discuss later. These two fig tree species were the dedicated places of worship and sacrifice. All right, the Holy Spirit has been the hand behind recounseling the old Kikuyu traditions of our Hebrew roots, which date back to 721 BCE. And if you watch the videos Legends of the Lost Tribe, this is actually the time we would expect to see Bantus coming into Africa after 722 BCE, after the Syrian exile. And this actually goes back to the Kikuyu oral traditions as well, as we just read. But it says when the northern kingdom was invaded and exiled to the nations. Even in their exile, God still preserved for himself a remnant. Kikuyu people exiled to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia humbled themselves and chose to be called by the name of the sycamore fig that was cut down by the Assyrian invasion of the northern kingdom of Israel. So the Kikuyu actually named themselves after a sycamore fig or after a tree. They continued to rejoice and worship the Lord God of Israel, even though the fig tree could not blossom. The flocks were cut off, and there was none tangible blessing. So the name of the Gikuyu tribes is connected to the uprooting and dispersal of the northern tribes of Israel. All tribes of Israel who were scattered to the nations are the remnant on the stump of the cut sycamore tree, or sycamore fig, prophesied it to be regathered before the second coming of King Messiah. Continuing, starting at the very top, it says, it is interesting that the Jewish writers wrote of the unnavigatable river Sabat-Yon. For 6 days, nobody could cross it due to its strong current that carried stones along with tremendous force, but it rested on the Sabbat. Unfortunately, the Jewish law prohibits any work or walking on the Sabbat. Thus, exiled tribes from the north could not get back to the southern kingdom. The impassable river was the hand of God to prevent the exile from returning, since he had a plan for them in their distant land. Their path was not only hedged with the river, but there was constant warlike unrest that caused them to move further and further away from the promised land until they got to the place destined as their place of rest. All right. It says below are links that expound on the river Sabat-Yon, but specifically this says a rabbi from the Or Samayach Institute mentions the exile of some tribes to Africa, to the mountains of snow, all right, to the mountains of snow, which aligns with the Kikuyu snow-peaked Mount Karinyaga. The rabbi writes, in addition to Assyria, they were exiled through Egypt to Pathros of the southern Nile and Cush, Ethiopia. And we can find this within Isaiah 11:11, of course. It goes on to say the Talmud also says the tribes were exiled to both Africa and the mountains of Selug or snow, quite possibly referring to Ethiopia and the mountains of western Iran. And you can find that, of course, in Sanhedrin 94b. Now, it gets interesting because here's an actual depiction of these Mount Kirin-Inyaga or the Kirin-Yaga mountains that can also be mentioned as or known as the mountains of snow that was mentioned in the Talmud or the Sanhedrin, where it says the 10 tribes or some of the tribes were exiled to. Again, it said they were exiled beyond the Sabat-Yon as well as the mountains of Selug or snow. But again, we're going to start at the top. It says, upon arrival to the mountains of Kirin-Yaga region, the descendants of the tribe of Asher received a new name associated with their role as tender of the fig tree. The newly acquired name Kikuyu has its roots in the sycamore fig Gikuyu tree as a connection to the sycamore fig that was cut with the Assyrian invasion of the northern kingdom. All right. So the Kikuyu tribe is actually named after or descendants of the tribe of Asher. As we're going to continue, we're going to see that they might be actually descendants of more than one tribe, but based on oral traditions from some of the elders, they do descend from two tribes, one tribe being Asher. Okay, and Gikuyu is actually named after the sycamore tree, as they mentioned. But again, we're going to continue to bring out some more information regarding these people. But again, important to note, she said, upon arrival to the Mount Kirinyaga region, the descendants from the tribe of Asher received a new name associated with their role as tender of the fig tree. Their newly acquired name, Gikuyu, has its roots in the sycamore fig, all right, or the sycamore tree as a connection to the sycamore fig that was cut with the Assyrian invasion and the exile of the northern kingdom. All right. Now, we're about to get into some more oral traditions, specifically dealing with the Kikuyu. And this source is coming from Jesus Christ, enculturated into a Kikuyu elderhood. All right. And out there to the bottom of the page. But we're going to start at the very top. It says the other traditions passionately asserted by several of the interview elders. All right, so these are interview Kikuyu elders. It says they trace the origins of the Agikuyu among the Israelites. It is interesting to note that a considerable number of elders linked the Agikuyu with Israelites. Some supported their stand by drawing out parallels between Agikuyu way of life and indeed worldview and elements within Jewish scriptures. All right. Kangololo, Kanglo, seems to support this theory / opinion, where he says that the Agikuyu tribe is divided into 10 clans, Merigia, similar to the 12 tribes of Israel. All right. It goes on to say cultural similarities between the Agikuyu and the Jews, which we need to go into. And here it gets very interesting because it names off another tribe that these people would be descended from. And it says, according to some elders, the Kikuyu came from Abaki in Abyssinia or Ethiopia, who belonged to the tribe of Judah and migrated past through Meroe, thereby settling and multiplying at Makuri, Wakataja, or Wakantaga, from where they further dispersed. All right. So again, according to some elders, the Agikuyu came from Abaki in Abyssinia, who belonged to the tribe of Judah. All right. Next highlighted, it says they say that when the Agikuyu left Egypt, Ngai led them through Moses as children of Abraham under Moses' guidance, and they crossed the Jordan. Later, they came to Ethiopia as people of Judah. Eventually, they migrated and came to Maraga. This was in a place called Maru Ri Wakata. They increased the number and they dispersed according to respective clans. All right. So again, according to Kikuyu elders, they descend from the tribe of Asher as well as Judah by way of them coming into Egypt, down to Abyssinia, and then into the location they are today. All right. And with that, I believe that it's all we have. All right. Okay. And if there's any questions, go ahead, drop them in the chat. Any questions, comments, etc., drop them in the chat. All right. And this brother says the Zulu people do not have our customs. All right. Please go back and watch it. You can't say our customs without mentioning the Zulu. We are blood relatives to the Zulu. The Zulu are Israelites. They have the same exact customs: circumcision, libation, livered rights, war rights. They have all the same traditions, customs as the Igbos, everyone else. But again, if you have any questions, concerns, please drop them in the chat before we get ready and wrap this up. All right. Looking at the comment section. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, but again, next Shabbat we're gonna get back into the stories of Eldad the Danite. I'm gonna get back into the stories of Eldad the Danite and showing where he actually was saying the Sabbat Yom River was, showing what tribe he possibly was of, and showing how how the Sabbat Yom River was indeed within sub-Saharan Africa. All right, and it pretty much lines up with the Bible. All right, and this brother says, "Tell me why Bantus fall within African gene variations." That's looking at modern day terms. That's because majority of the people with haplogroup E are within Africa. This clade is not from Africa. I can direct you to a video that you can go and watch, because again, I don't have time to sit up here and lecture you on something I've already proven, something I've already brought out plenty of times. So I'm gonna share my screen and you can go to my channel and look at these videos I'm about to show you, where I show you that haplogroup is Semitic. I show you that you have sons of Ishmael with haplogroup E. You have sons of Moab with haplogroup E. You have sons of Edom with haplogroup E. You have Sephardic Jews with haplogroup E. You have Ethiopian Jews with haplogroup E. You have Yemenite Jews with haplogroup E. When it comes to us saying Bantus are Jews, it's a problem. But again, here's a video you can look at, Seed of Thy Fathers, where I go into this and I show you, that we are indeed descendants of the Israelites genetically. You can go look at Letters of the Lost Tribes, videos 1 and 2, where I show you the migration of these peoples through sources and genetics. And you can go also look at We Are Not Sons of Ham, where I actually show you the sons of Ham. I show you the native Africans, and I show you how Bantus are not related in no shape or fashion or form to native Africans, Cushites, Canaanites, Puttites, Libyans. They're not. But again, you can go check out those videos. Please show me the ancient Levantine DNA samples. Please show me please, I'm gonna wait on you to drop the ancient Levantine DNA samples into the chat. And then I'm gonna show you how you don't know what you're talking about within that paper. Because they actually tell you ancient Levantines and modern Levantines are not the same people. Ancient Levantines had haplogroup E. Modern day Levantines are related to Europeans, opposed to ancient Semites who would have haplogroup E. We've already brought this out. I have never recalled reading that the Khoisan were Hebrew in culture. Yeah, I never said the Khoisan, my brother. I never said Khoisan. I said Xhosa. All right, Xhosa. Xhosa. All right. See if I can show you again how you spell these tribes' name. Amahosa. All right. Right up there to your left. The Khoisan are Hamites. All right. The Khoisan are Hamites. But again, I'll wait for that brother to bring that source out. But if anybody has any more questions while we waiting for this brother to bring this source out, can you please drop the source for that for what you said? If not, we're gonna wrap this up. Since you said specifically you have ancient Levantine DNA samples, and what you're gonna do is show stuff with haplogroup J and things of that sort, and we actually know that those are ancient Europeans, sons of Japhet. If you're going to show anything showing ancient genetics in the Levant, it's going to be haplogroup E, not anything else. And again, you can go watch those videos for references. But I'm waiting on you to drop that in the chat for me. Waiting on you to drop that in the chat for me. Yeah, bro, I'm just waiting for you to drop that link in the chat. That's all, nothing else. I'm not answering anything else until you drop that in the chat for me. And let's see if I might actually bring something out while we at it, while we on this conversation. And again, if anybody has any more questions, comments, please go ahead and drop it in the chat before I wrap it up. I'm just waiting for this brother to respectfully put his so-called DNA findings of the ancient Levant into the chat. Yeah, brother, I'm waiting on you to drop that in the chat. Give you a couple more minutes. If you ain't gonna bring it out, then I'm gonna wrap this up. Just send a link for whatever you was talking about. Yeah. And while you doing that, I'm gonna show you that. Yeah, I'm still waiting for his samples as well, because he's saying a lot in the chat, but he's not dropping any sources or any samples. So if anything, and it's actually papers telling you that ancient Levantines were actually more closely related to Africans or Natufians and Africans, or rather modern day Arabs are related to Africans, opposed to modern day Levantines who are related to European hunter gatherers. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. I don't think this brother has any sources. I just think he's just here to throw us off track. But again, man, I gave you 4 videos you can go watch. My emails on my channel. You want to reach out, you can. Yeah. Because again, he's not dropping any sources for the claims he's making. But yeah, family. Again, I'll be back next Shabbat. We're gonna continue to bring out this information. We're gonna show basically the location where Eldad identified as the Shabbat River, or the Sambont Yon River. and we also going to get into some history about Jews being sold as slaves in the slave trade. And yes, he didn't drop anything. He's saying he did, but he didn't. He's saying he did drop something, but he didn't. He didn't drop anything. But yes, it's a lot of people that like to say, there's no such thing as Jews being sold as slaves into the slave trade, this and that. We're gonna bring it out both ways. We're gonna bring it out Jews or Black Jews being sold as slaves from Europe, or Black European Jews, as they like to call them. We're gonna bring it out as well as African Jews being sold in the slave trade as well. And so we're gonna bring that out. But again, bro, I'm gonna drop my email for you, man. Since you really want to do this, you didn't drop the I'm gonna drop my email for you, and email me, and we can set up a Zoom, and we can chop this up like men. All right. All right. There's my email for you. But again, family, I will see you all next Shabbat. Oop, that's wrong. Let me put it back up for you real quick. Ball W. All right, there you go. Please, my brother, email me. Yeah, brother, I can't. I don't know how to mute you or block your comments from here. If I blocked your comments, you wouldn't be able to comment at all. So you can't. I don't think you can delete comments on here. All I can do is put user in timeout and block user. So again, just please email me. Like, email me ASAP, and we can set up a Zoom. You don't have to show your face. You have to do nothing. We can just, show the information, and you can tell me, well, your thoughts or whatever. You can basically explain what you're trying to say, and I can show you my information. All right. So please reach out. I'm not trying to be, a butthole. I'm not trying to be holier than thou, but just make sure you reach out to me. All right. Make sure you email me. But again, Shabbat Shalom, fam. Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat, and I will see you next week. Shalom.